This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I am sheltering in place and have the pleasure of having Joe Burton, CEO, entrepreneur, highly well-traveled and educated CEO of Whil.com. And he is going to talk about his experiences and how he is going to help solve loneliness, obesity, de-stressing, and getting people more sleep and higher productivity. Joe, welcome to Halo Talks.
Thanks, Pete. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So, Joe, you want to start off just giving your personal background as a corporate executive and burning a candle and then basically hitting pause on yourself personally and saying, hey, I got to start a company because I'm not the only one with these issues.
Yeah, I think my background is, I spent 20 years in corporate life, primarily in, Fortune 500 public companies. And that was 20 years of, 12-hour days, working weekends, 70% travel, and living and dying by the quarterly numbers. And, in my personal experience, it just all caught up with me. And so, I'm 52 now. In my mid-30s, my health started giving out. I was a big basketball player, herniated 2 discs in my back. 6 years later, re-herniated the same 2 discs. After about 8 years of back pain, that turned into insomnia, that turned into asthma. And, my body was kind of falling apart in my early 40s. And then right around the same time, I lost an older sister to drugs. And a year later, I lost my twin sister to suicide, also a long-term addict. And so, I was lucky enough to be in this job that was bigger than I ever thought I could achieve, COO of a division in a public company, and kind of hating every minute of it. And that's really what brought me sort of kicking and screaming into mindfulness and meditation.
Got it. Sorry to hear about your losses there. I think a lot of people that are entrepreneurs and that are high-powered executives are always trying to highlight their highlight reel. And if they ask for help, then they think that's a weakness. So do you see that there's been kind of at least a sea change in, hey, if you got an issue, like raise your hand, we're not going to hold it against you?
Oh, yeah. 10 years ago when, I had doctors recommending spinal fusion, and then I found one doctor who recommended meditation, and I was kind of like, spinal fusion sounds easier. And at the time I was thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Like, what if somebody found out I'm meditating? That wouldn't go down well with the board. And fast forward 10 years, and I think things have changed dramatically. Mindfulness is in the conversation. People are looking for stress relief, resilience tools, and help in different shapes and sizes. And so I think now this idea of just being open, more vulnerable, authentic is really in vogue. And I think it's fitting because it's really stressful, pretending you're okay all the time, when the truth is, like, everyone needs help at every level.
Mm-hmm. So talk about starting a company and also feeling as if you have the right to start a company, because obviously you're brought up in a corporate world, and you've got a box and you've got quarterly earnings and you're looking at the data and you're managing people. To start a new business, definitely would probably be foreign-ish to you, I would assume. So what, or not? So.
Yeah, no, yes and no. It's I had the good pleasure as I started my career at Price Waterhouse, now PwC, but moved from auditing into consulting into M&A. So I had a lot of M&A background, and then went over and helped Y&R go public, and then sell Y&R as a public company to WPP. And then between working with WPP and IPG, started 4 different divisions, all digital inside of a public company umbrella. And so I got the notion in my head, like, well, if I'm doing it for them, I can go out and do it for myself. Clearly this is going to be easy. And boy, was I wrong. It is so much easier when somebody else is paying all the bills and providing the real estate and the people, and you just sort of have to show up and order people around.
Right.
So I had a little bit of experience doing it, but doing it on my own, no one, I never expected building a stress resilience business would be so stressful. It's pretty intense.
Right. Well, talk about what Will does, and how you convince, or maybe it's easier now to convince corporate, whether it's the HR department or the CFO, that this is a good investment in their human capital.
Sure. So we have a digital training platform that covers 12 different aspects of well-being and performance. And so whether it's helping people learn to meditate or reduce stress or sleep better or build emotional intelligence skills, improve relationships, and all of these things are connected, right? So it's hard to show up and, quote unquote, be your best self when you're stressed out, not sleeping well, and in pain. And so our value proposition to companies is really, the preventative measures to help people build the right life skills to manage stress and ongoing change is really critical right now. And if you don't invest in their well-being, you're going to, or their wellness, you're going to invest in their illness later through curative costs. So you really sort of want to rebalance where you're investing your money. I think it's a lot more fun to invest on the front end so employees can be healthy and happy versus on the back end after they've hit a wall and are really feeling it.
Yeah, I mean, in the health club industry, which is kind of what we do as our day job, is try and get more and more capital put into companies that are, focused mostly on exercise. We find that a number of employers still are not willing to cover the $40 or $50 or $100 per month or personal training sessions or group exercise. They kind of dole it out on like allocations. But, for $200 a month, that would be the max that an employee would spend. And if they end up having to go to the doctor, it's probably 2 or 3 times that just as, to start. And then when I see all these commercials of these medications that get approved, yet 40 out of the 60-second commercial is all the side effects that you're going to get from taking this medication. 1, you can solve it by actually exercising. Or 2, I'd actually rather have the existing condition because the side effects might be worse than the actual illness. So, I feel like do you think we're finally at a point where corporate America realizes that, hey, instead of a 12-month or 24-month sales cycle to install a will and to say, hey, let's allocate like a certain amount of money, which might look like a big number, but it's pennies compared to our healthcare costs. Where are we at, and has your sales cycle, materially decreased from what it was when you started?
Well, it is, and I think I started the company about 5 years ago. So today we've got just over 250 customers and users in just over 110 countries. And I think 5 years ago, talking to people about mindfulness and meditation was still fairly new. And now, we're integrating into learning management systems, EAPs, corporate wellness platforms. And so it's definitely in the conversation. I would say, we're about $10 to $15 a year per employee for, our entire mental and emotional well-being solution. And I would say it's mixed. Some verticals are really embracing it. We do a lot of business in financial services and technology and healthcare. And I think these are the industries that, to a large degree, have sort of been flush, and they spend, $10 to $15 a month on snacks that aren't good for people. So spending, $10 to $15 a year on something that's really good for people is not that big of a bridge to cross. There are other industries that I think are a lot slower, automotive, manufacturing, construction, where they still have this notion of like, oh, well, we've got, blue collar guys and they're out on the line and they're in trucks and da-da-da. Well, I got to tell you, like on the lines and in trucks or wherever they are, they're not sleeping. They've got tremendous back pain. They're having all kinds of mental and emotional issues. They have trouble, managing their thoughts and emotions, managing their anger, et cetera. And we need to get these industries over the hurdle of how do we introduce it. In the same way that you guys are focused on healthy, active lifestyle outdoors, I would say we're focused on sort of the healthy, active lifestyle indoors, and by that I mean in your head. Managing what's going on up there is pretty darn critical. People are getting burnt out on anxiety, worry, grief, regret. and they have no idea how to manage their thoughts and emotions or where to start. So I think these kind of investments, indoors and outdoors, are critical. And to your point, pennies on the dollars compared to the stuff that I walk into companies are like, oh, here's our snack room, and here's our room where you go and grab all your swag, and here, the amount of stuff that they throw at people in the thousands of dollars, and yet they won't take a step back and think about what a minor investment in people's physical and mental and emotional health means is kind of astonishing for some of these industries.
Yeah. So, one thing that came up when I was watching some of your videos is just talking about the quarterly earnings and just like the pace of business. And I used to work in a large investment bank, and they had equity research analysts that would put out reports, and they would put out like earnings per share, targets. And these were guys that I probably went to business school with or went to some other business school, and they basically plugged it into an Excel spreadsheet, and they said, this company based on this industry should grow at 22%, CAGR into perpetuity. And we're going to value the stock based on that growth. And none of those people have ever actually run a business and understand I got to hire people. I got to do the marketing. I got to ramp them up. I got to keep them, right? Because I got turnover. I got an HR department. I've got version 1 going to version 2. And I can't really tell my new customers that there's version 2 coming out, or else no one's buying version 1. So do you think that maybe with COVID and maybe the people slowing down for a hot second to understand maybe the pace that we were trying to go at is just not sustainable? Like, we're not trying to run a 100-meter race. We're trying to run a marathon. A company is not designed to run 100 meters every quarter. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's really kind of balanced. In other words, you do have some companies that are thinking like, okay, this is good for us to take a pause and really start to think about people's health and happiness a bit more. And then you have I think there are a lot of companies out there that are saying, this is an awesome time to cut costs without any blowback, right? We're seeing a lot, I think, on both sides. The reality of the situation is I do think the pace of modern living and modern business is catching up to people. And, our whole business is not just around, when we talk about mindfulness and meditation, this is not about sitting in silence. This is about building life skills so you can achieve, right? So we're all about well-being and performance. So we think that's great. But if we're not giving professionals the right skills to understand what's going on inside the noggin, we're setting them up for failure. Right. And this is my personal experience is how many times can you run into a wall, before you break down? And, I think Dr. Liz Stanley at Georgetown University does some pretty incredible research on resilience. And this idea of push and recover expands your range of resilience, which means expands your range of performance. But push, and then break, research indicates that you can only bounce back at a lower level. And then the vast majority of people are likely to go back to the same routine. Push, break again. And then you bounce back at yet a lower level. So I can imagine, you probably know a lot of people like this. I know I do. Like, wow, they burnt out. Like they hit a wall too many times. They never bounce back. And when you reach, I don't know how old you are, Pete, but let me just say you
48, look great. 48.
48. Well,
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. That's why, bro. That's why we do audio, man. That's why this is an audio.
My man,
that was awesome.
Low hanging fruit, friends. I know a lot of people like this, where it's kind of like, wow, high flying career, push too hard, break, and then you really have trouble getting back. It's almost impossible to get back to where you were. And I went through that a couple of times in my career. And, only through these kind of practices around understanding, this is how the mind and body work. This is, we create and strengthen these neural pathways around what we do most. And most of us are creating routines that are incredibly unhealthy for us. And then we reinforce and double down on these routines until they become habits. And then they become an ingrained part of our character. And then, if you're like me, you're showing up in a public company, traveling the world, like frustrated, angry, impatient, and barking about quarterly numbers all the time, and feeling like, you can live or die based on a tweet, an email, a phone call, or whether or not you hit your numbers. It's just not a healthy way to live. Now, do you need to hit your numbers? Absolutely. But if you have the right skills, you're not dragging yourself and everyone around you down through that process.
Well, over the last 5 years in the health club and fitness industry in general, there's been a huge wave of recovery. And that was never really part of the conversation. So I feel like there's a push towards understanding how your physical body works. And, whether it's a Theragun, whether it's getting a massage, whether it's stretching, whether it's an infrared sauna, LED light therapy, muscle recovery. So I feel like that's starting to evolve into an actual routine. I don't think anybody's really nailed it yet to say, all right, I do this kind of workout, and then I'm going to do an infrared sauna, then I'm going to do meditation, then I'm going to do yoga, then I'm going to do X, Y, Z. So it seems like you've, from the mind standpoint, you're really trying to treat the mind pretty much as a muscle, if you will, and saying, if you're going to take your body and make it more resilient, the mind needs to be considered in the same, type of way. Is that accurate? Or
I think it's
build upon that.
I think it's a great analogy, and it's if you're going through circuit training for the body, this is circuit training for the mind, and you realize, okay, your thoughts drive your feelings, drive your actions, drive your results, and either we get into a positive cycle around that and a healthy cycle, and we build on that, or we get into a negative one and we reinforce that. So when we think about well-being and performance, we are hitting on sleep and relationships and physical health and what you're putting into your body and how you think and emotional intelligence skills and self-awareness and so forth. And with the idea that in the same way that, like, when you hit the gym, some things are, work for you and you're like, oh, I like this. It makes me feel good. I can get into this. I see I'm building muscle. I see results. And then other things you're like, yeah, I hate that. Like, I'm not a kettlebell person. Never will be.
Well, Dave started a kettlebell company, so thanks for dissing on that.
Well, yeah, my bad.
Okay, it's perfectly okay.
It's good. But you're definitely not editing that part out. Maybe the part about my age.
Yeah, that's the same guy that laughed when I called you old looking.
He's he's like my Ed McMahon from back in the day.
Exactly.
He's your 80s throwback Joe.
Yeah. But the same goes for these kind of mental, and emotional training skills. You pick and choose the techniques and tactics that work for you, and then you double down on them. You're like, oh, I'm really good at that. I don't take things personally anymore, or I don't lay in bed ruminating on, conspiracy theories and who I can kill tomorrow. You clear that stuff out with individual techniques that work for you, and that's what we're focused on, right? Skill building.
So as you look at the industry as a whole, and you look at, Headspace as an example, or some of these other apps that are out there, has all that venture capital that's been put into those companies made your conversations easier from a standpoint of basically building the market awareness?
Well, it has indeed. And, I'm an early investor and the former president of Headspace. And so I'm super happy with that. I'm like, I wish them tremendous luck, and I hope they exit soon. What has come along with that is a lot more interest. I think companies are starting to take this seriously. I do think that each boat that rises, rises other boats as well. And there's some really good behaviors out there. And then what comes along with that are we've had a lot of issues with consumer apps just knocking off what we've created in the enterprise space. We've been very focused on just serving companies. I do think that it's the Wild West and the gold rush in the consumer app space. And it is making its way into the enterprise now. And so, I think witness this in the past 6 months, we now have deals with partnership arrangements with CVS Health, Magellan Health in the payer provider space, Cornerstone On Demand, SABA, Absorb in the learning management space. Virgin Pulse and Limeade have been partners of us for the past few years in the corporate wellness space. And they're all looking to bring in these kind of well-being and mindfulness and resilience skills because it's a huge gap in each of these industries. So I'm excited about that. I think we're the only one in our space right now in the enterprise space that is enterprise grade. None of the consumer apps have been able to meet the standards that we have to meet. And so, and I also recognize companies, it takes a while for companies to catch on. Like you have the consumer app breakouts, that will go on for a few years, and then companies wake up to what individuals want as consumers. And I think that's happening in the enterprise space right now.
So have you self-funded the company, taken in any venture rounds or friends and family rounds or anything?
So I've taken in funding here. Our original investors are the founders of Lululemon. And so they're a family office, and they've been just fantastic to work with. But other than that, it's just, me and there are only other investors.
Got it. And so Lululemon obviously, is their ethos is they're more of a movement and a cause. I feel like, in addition to obviously a profitable and now a public company. Did the partnership with them correspond with how you want to grow this business and not, churn and try and do something fast and then hope that you could sell it? Were you aligned up front on, I'm going to build a business and I'm going to run this business methodically, and we're going to create value along the way. And once we create value, there'll be an exit because we're going to get paid for what we've built. Is that something that kind of jived up front?
Well, I've always looked at this as this is my life's work. It's I think there are a bunch of consumer apps out there that rip everybody off and are running get rich quick schemes, and I just don't think it works in the enterprise space. So everything we do has got to be based in science, based in evidence-based studies. We work with MDs, PhDs, certified experts in all we do. And I didn't build the company to flip the company. I built it to help people. And I think that will turn into value over the course of time. Just one point of clarification, we don't have a partnership with Lululemon. We have investment from the family office of their founder. Yeah, so no connection to the brand per se, other than their founders having invested in us.
Got it. So in closing here, do you have any quotes? Obviously I've seen some quotes on your videos I've got on YouTube, but what are some of the things that your employees say, Joe says that all the time, or what you live by?
Yeah, I just think, you got to live life with integrity, do what you, say what you're going to do and do what you say. And that's a really big deal. And when you're in our space, we're dealing with mental and emotional health. And so we can't fake it, right? So show up every day. And then when you stumble and you're in the wrong, make it right? It happens to all of us all the time. As long as you make it right, it works.
That's great. Well, I'm glad we connected. I'm happy that we're going to be able to launch this and have our Halo audience and our health clubs and boutique owners understand what's going on in the corporate world. And hopefully there's a nexus that gets formed that, we can be part of the solution and, put the mind and the body together, and we will create better humans.
Absolutely. And then likewise, I just want to say thanks, to you, Pete, for the work that you're doing and just getting the good word out. We got to start taking care of people on the front end of things instead of taking care of them on the back end when it's a little too late.
Amen.
Thank you.
It's great to meet you, and look forward to collaborating on opportunities in the future. Thanks, Joe.
Pleasure.
All right. Take care. Appreciate it.
Give a shout out to my good friends at lassogear.com, LASSOGEAR.com. I want to give you 20% off using the code HALOTALKS on the best compression socks on the planet. I've been using them during the pandemic. My field goal kicking is further and stronger than it's ever been. Check out these socks. You'll love them. They got an L and an R to make it easy to put on each foot. Enjoy it. Trust me, you'll love them.